Imagine building a company so valuable it's worth more than Ford, more than Deutsche Bank, more than Southwest Airlines. Now imagine watching it all collapse in just 6 weeks. This is the story of WeWork, the company that convinced the world that renting desks was worth $47 billion and then went completely, spectacularly to zero. To understand how WeWork became the most overvalued company in history, you need to understand Adam Neumann. Born in Israel in 1979, Neumann grew up on a kibbutz, a communal settlement where everything was shared. His parents divorced when he was young, and he moved around constantly, living in at least 7 different homes before he turned 18. He was dyslexic, he struggled in school, and he served in the Israeli Navy. But there was one thing Adam Neumann had in abundance: charisma, the kind of charisma that could make you believe in anything. Neumann moved to New York City in 2001 and bounced between failed business ideas. He tried selling baby clothes with built-in knee pads. He tried women's shoes with collapsible heels. Nothing worked. But in 2008, while renting a small office in Brooklyn, he noticed something. The building had empty space, and freelancers were desperate for affordable places to work. Along with his friend Miguel McKelvey, an architect, Neumann launched Green Desk, an eco-friendly co-working space. They sold their stake in Green Desk in 2010 and used that money to start something bigger. They called it WeWork. WeWork opened its first location in Soho, Manhattan in 2010. And from the very beginning, Adam Neumann understood something most people didn't. He wasn't selling desk space. He was selling a feeling, a community, a lifestyle. WeWork spaces had beer on tap, yoga classes, networking events. They had exposed brick, beautiful design, and a sense of belonging. Freelancers and startups didn't just rent desks. They joined WeWork. And in the early days, the model actually made a lot of sense. WeWork would sign long-term leases on buildings, renovate them beautifully, and then rent out individual desks and offices on short-term, flexible leases at a premium. In 2016, Adam Neumann met a man who would change everything. Masayoshi Son, the CEO of SoftBank, the Japanese conglomerate that controlled a $100 billion vision fund, the largest technology investment fund in history. Son and Neumann met, and within 12 minutes, Son was sold. 12 minutes! That's all it took for Son to decide he wanted to pour billions of dollars into a company that rented office space. According to reporting by the Wall Street Journal, Son told Neumann that he wasn't crazy enough. He said, in a good way, you need to be crazier. And Adam Neumann took that advice to heart. SoftBank first invested $4.4 billion in WeWork in 2017, pushing the valuation to $20 billion. Then they invested again and again. By January 2019, WeWork's private valuation had reached a staggering $47 billion. To put that in perspective, that made WeWork the most valuable startup in America, worth more than companies like SpaceX at the time. But here's the problem. WeWork's revenue in 2018 was $1.8 billion. Its losses that same year, $1.9 billion. They were losing more money than they were making. Every single dollar of revenue was being consumed by losses. And then some. But Masayoshi Son didn't care. He believed WeWork could be the Amazon of real estate. He believed in Neumann's vision that WeWork wasn't just a real estate company. It was a technology platform, a way of life, the future of how humans would work, live, and connect. SoftBank's money allowed WeWork to expand at a pace that defied logic. At its peak, WeWork operated more than 800 locations across 124 cities in 38 countries. They were the largest private office tenant in New York, London, and Washington, D.C. The cash was flowing, the offices were opening, and Adam Neumann was becoming a celebrity founder on the level of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. And this is where the story gets truly wild, because behind the scenes, Adam Neumann was running WeWork like it was his personal playground. Let's start with the drinking. WeWork wasn't just a company that had beer on tap for its members. It was a company where alcohol was woven into the corporate culture at every level. Employees described all-night drinking sessions, company retreats that felt more like music festivals, complete with performances by artists like the Chainsmokers and Lorde. Adam himself was known for walking around the office barefoot, drinking tequila shots with employees in the middle of the workday. But the drinking was just the beginning. In 2015, Neumann chartered a private jet to fly with friends to Mexico. According to the Wall Street Journal, crew members found marijuana stashed behind a cushion on the plane. The jet's owner was so alarmed that the drugs had been brought across international borders that they pulled the aircraft, leaving Adam and his group stranded without a ride home. On another chartered flight, passengers reportedly spat tequila at each other and vomited throughout the cabin. The crew was not tipped. Then there was the spending. Neumann bought a $60 million private jet for the company, which he used extensively for personal travel, including surfing trips. He invested company money in a wave pool company called Wave Garden because he loved surfing. He started a private elementary school called We Grow inside a WeWork building, where tuition cost over $40,000 a year. His wife, Rebecca, who was the chief brand officer and also happened to be Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin, reportedly demanded that employees be fired based on their energy. She once walked into a new office and told staff to fire 20 people within the next 15 minutes because their energy was bad. Neumann also had a troubling habit of blurring the line between his personal wealth and the company's assets. He bought buildings personally and then leased them back to WeWork, essentially having the company pay him rent. Between 2016 and 2019, WeWork paid nearly $21 million in rent to buildings partially owned by its own CEO. He also trademarked the word we and then charged WeWork $5.9 million in licensing fees to use the name The We Company. He was literally charging his own company millions to use a word he had trademarked. When this became public, he returned the money. But the fact that it happened at all tells you everything about how WeWork was being run. In August 2019, WeWork filed its S-1, the document required for a company to go public. And it was like nothing Wall Street had ever seen. The very first page opened with the words, "We dedicate this to the energy of we, greater than any one of us, but inside each of us." This was not a normal corporate filing. This was a manifesto, and the deeper analysts dug, the worse it got. The filing revealed that WeWork had lost $1.9 billion in 2018 on revenues of $1.8 billion. But even more alarming was how the company tried to hide it. WeWork introduced a made-up financial metric called community-adjusted EBITDA. They took their massive losses and then stripped out basically every real expense. Building costs, marketing, general administrative expenses, and design costs. After removing all those actual costs of running the business, they proudly showed a positive number. Wall Street analysts were not amused. One analyst called it perhaps the most ridiculous, most misleading financial metric ever reported by a company seeking to go public. It was like a restaurant reporting it was profitable after excluding the cost of food, staff, and rent. The S-1 also revealed Adam Neumann's extraordinary control over the company. He held shares with 20 votes each, meaning he could outvote virtually every other shareholder combined. The filing disclosed his real estate conflicts of interest, his personal loans from the company, totaling over $700 million, and the fact that if he died or became incapacitated, his wife Rebecca had the power to choose his replacement. A CEO succession plan based on spousal appointment. It was governance straight out of a monarchy. The market reaction was swift and brutal. Banks that had initially told WeWork it could go public at a $65 billion valuation began slashing their estimates. First to 47 billion, then 20, then 15, then 10. Institutional investors refused to buy in at any price. The IPO roadshow became a disaster. Within weeks, WeWork's board forced the company to delay and then officially shelved the IPO entirely. The dream of going public was dead, and Adam Neumann's position as CEO was suddenly very much in question. On September 24th, 2019, Adam Neumann was forced to resign as CEO of the company he co-founded. He didn't go quietly. SoftBank, desperate to salvage its investment, agreed to pay Neumann an exit package worth roughly $1.7 billion, including a $185 million consulting fee, a $500 million credit line, and the purchase of nearly $1 billion of his shares. The man who ran the company into the ground walked away a billionaire. What followed was devastating for the people who actually worked at WeWork. The company laid off 2,400 employees in November 2019, roughly 20% of its global workforce. These were people who had believed in the mission, who had taken below-market salaries in exchange for stock options that were now worthless. Some were told their positions were eliminated in group meetings that lasted less than 5 minutes. Many received minimal severance. The company retreats, the free beer, the talk of changing the world. It all meant nothing when the money ran out. WeWork eventually went public through a SPAC merger in October 2021 at a valuation of just $9 billion, a fraction of its former peak. But the bleeding didn't stop. The company continued to lose money quarter after quarter. Office vacancy rates soared during the pandemic. And on November 6, 2023, WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It listed $19 billion in liabilities and just $15 billion in assets. SoftBank, which had poured over $14 billion into the company, wrote off nearly the entire investment. It remains one of the largest venture capital losses in history. And Adam Neumann, he landed on his feet, as people like him always seem to do. Despite presiding over one of the greatest corporate disasters in modern history, Neumann remained a billionaire. Forbes estimated his net worth at $1.7 billion, even after WeWork's bankruptcy. In 2022, he launched a new startup called Flow, a residential real estate company. Andreessen Horowitz, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious venture capital firms, invested $350 million in Flow before it even had a product. Neumann reportedly told people his new company would either compete with or partner with WeWork. You really cannot make this stuff up. So, what can we learn from the rise and fall of WeWork? First, charisma is not a business model. Adam Neumann was brilliant at selling a vision, but vision without financial discipline is just a hallucination. Second, the people who enabled this deserve as much scrutiny as Neumann himself. SoftBank poured billions into a company losing money hand over fist. Banks were ready to take WeWork public at a $65 billion valuation. The system that's supposed to prevent these things failed completely. And third, perhaps the most important lesson, the basic business model was never the problem. Co-working is a real market worth billions of dollars. Flexible office space makes sense. What didn't make sense was pretending a real estate company was a tech company, spending money like there was no tomorrow, and letting one person run the whole thing like a personal kingdom. WeWork went from $47 billion to bankruptcy. Adam Neumann walked away with $1 billion, and thousands of employees and investors were left holding the bag. That is the story of WeWork. If you found this documentary valuable, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We make deep dives into the biggest business stories every week. Drop a comment below. Do you think Adam Neumann will succeed with Flow, or is history about to repeat itself? Thanks for watching.